gonna say it. Somebody should. Let's talk about two time. Let's talk about bum wine, yeah. You're asking the questions that nobody could. Like where the bone thugs and are they in harmony? Do helpful snowman.
Tan 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 tan. Ta 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 ta. Okay, everyone, welcome. Yeah, and you're welcome for that. I found a Wikipedia article that I found interesting. Can I say found in another way? It was called List of Classical Music Concerts with an Unruly Audience Response. Now, I found this interesting because it's, obviously, if I went to a classical music concert and there was an unruly response, that would probably be the best outcome possible for me. Just because I'm uncultured swine, I don't think I would probably enjoy a classical music concert very much. I mean, I'd like to think I could. Do you know what I'm saying? I think classical music is probably one of those things that, like, maybe most people aspire to be someone who would like classical music. But at the same time, most of us are like, well, if I could see them or Van Halen in the 80s, if I could see one of the greatest classical performances of all time or the greatest Van Halen performance, let's make it Motley Crue. The greatest Motley Crue performance versus the best classical music performance, I'd probably go with Crue. You know what I mean? That feels more my speed. But, so if something happened during a classical music concert, because I finally, sucked it up and was like, well, I guess I'll go to the classical music. You know what I mean? I would do it. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I might as well try it. You know what I'm saying? I might as well give it a go. Maybe I could find something and they're like the music of Universal Horror or something. And I'd be like, maybe. It sounds a little Castlevania-y. And I wouldn't go, I don't know that I would count going to one of the ones where they're like, yeah, we're going to play video game music or whatever. Because I'd be like, well, I don't know. I mean, would I go to that? Probably, maybe. But I don't think I would count that as a classical music thing. Just because I don't think it would suck the same way. If it doesn't suck, it obviously isn't classical music, I guess is what I'm saying. So anyway, if I did go and, a fist fight broke out, I'd be like, well, that was very unexpected. I have something to talk about. The next episode of Helpful Snowman has a topic. It'll be me going, I thought it would be me going to classical music and probably reaching a conclusion along the lines of, you know what? It was both not as bad as I thought it would be, and it was bad. But now it's like, and then a fist fight broke out. How do I tell that without burying the lead, but also without making it a 15-minute podcast? Anyway, so this is divided into century. 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st century. Yes, there have been unruly audiences at classical music concerts. Now, it's very specific, right? If it was like unruly audiences at music festivals, I'd be like, I mean, yeah, I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I feel like that's just, well, because I guess I assume also that everyone at a music festival is like drunk or on drugs. You know what I mean? When someone's like, can you believe a bunch of people in their late teens passed out in the heat at an EDM festival. And I'm like, yes, that's kind of what I picture happening a lot. But if they were like, did you know everyone at a classical music concert was flying on cocaine? I'd be like, well, now that you mention it, I guess in 1802, that was entirely possible. You know what I mean? They're all taking hits off their laudanum bottles or morphine or cocaine or some kind of shit you rub on your gums, some kind of Simpson and Son nerve tonic or whatever. So, in some ways I'm like, oh, maybe it was crazier. I mean, I bet you could smoke at these, right? Back in the day, probably up until the 80s. I don't know. Maybe they were like, you can't smoke here because these are performers who are singing. But maybe they were like, you can smoke literally on an airplane. So what are we going to do? So anyway, let's take a look at these. They all have details, some of which are more interesting than others. But here we go. There's only one from the 18th century. It was at Artaxerxes. It was a revival of Thomas Arne's opera Artaxerxes, and a mob protesting the abolition of half-price admission stormed the theater in the middle of the performance. I mean, already I'm a little in favor of this because I'm like, people I like sometimes. For example, I used to be a little bit more whatever about it, but I like that it seems like in France, for example, if they're like, we're thinking of bumping the retirement age from 65 to 65 and a half. I like that they're like, fuck you. You know what I mean? We are going to riot. If you think I'm going to work one more second under those conditions, yeah, guess what? The trains, they're going to go flying off the tracks because they're not safe anymore. You know what I mean? It seems like back in the day, I was always like, I don't know. It seems like maybe they're a little unreasonable as far as they won't even entertain the idea of anything like a minor change. But now, I mean, seeing where things are and everything, I'm like, well, maybe that's the tactic. You know what I mean? Maybe that's correct. Maybe you don't put up with any shit. And so then you just, then people don't give you shit. Because they're like, I mean, do you remember how these fuckers protested, how hard they striked when it was like we were like, we're going to reduce lunch breaks from 60 minutes to 55 and a half. And it was like a 4-month huge battle. And people died in clashes with the police, and everyone was getting tear gassed every day and like all this shit. And they're like, you know, if we actually tried to do something like actually really bad, I don't know if we'd be alive when it was all said and done. So I don't know. I partially appreciate it. This was in London, by the way, not in France. But I like a mob. You know, it's got to be weird, like, if you study classical music, to look at something like this and to be like, back in the day, people cared about this so much that, you know, they were protesting half-price admissions being gone. So much. There were enough people to still go to the concert and to have a mob that stormed the theater and, like, ruined the performance enough to be in the only 18th century entry into the list of classical music concerts with an unruly audience response. That's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm pretty proud of them. But yeah, I don't know. That's part of what I think must be depressing about playing or studying or whatever classical music is. It's just like, just how hard, you know, no one gives a shit about it. I mean, I guess writing books is kind of the same. It's like, well, you know, no one cares about this, right? And I'm like, shut up. All right, we're in the 19th century. William Reeve, composer, did Family Quarrels in London. Part of the Jewish audience catcalled because of the perceived anti-Jewish slights The melody of one of the songs in this opera greatly resembled the sacred Jewish Kaddish prayer. Kaddish? I don't know what to say about that. Part of the Jewish audience. I guess there must have been enough of a Jewish audience that it made a significant stir. I wonder what it would take to go to the movies and have that happen today. You know what I mean? Like, how bad would a movie have to be? Like, how anti-Semitic would a movie have to be for people to like start just yelling things in the theater? I mean, on one hand, I think it'd have to be pretty anti-Semitic, and on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know, man. People seem to do all kinds of shit in the theater, like checking their phones all the fucking time and talking through the whole movie and whatever, and it's just like, yeah, there you go. That's, when the movie theaters are like, how do we get people to go back to the theater again? And everyone's like, streaming is the problem. And I'm like, well, I like streaming because every time I go to the movies, it's like 10 minutes of anxiety at the beginning because I'm like waiting to see who's going to talk through this whole movie. Who's going to be looking at their phone through 90% of this movie? Who's going to check their phone 10 times throughout the course of this movie? I'm going to a concert later this summer, and it's a no phone experience concert, and I'm excited for it. I mean, I'm fine with it. It's not like not having phones there affects me that much, because usually when I go to a concert, what I try to do is I'm like, I'm going to take one photo, because then I have like a picture to remember it by, and that's it. You know what I mean? So I'll consciously be like, I'll take a photo, and I'm like, usually I take a photo during a song that I'm like, this isn't my number one jam, because I'm like, all right, if I don't really remember this, if I experience this through the screen of a phone, that's fine. But man, it seems like a lot of people spend a lot of time on their phones at the concert, like a lot of time. It's kind of crazy. Because people take these videos at concerts too, and I'm like, they don't really sound very good. You know what I mean? It never sounds remotely like what it did at the concert when you take a video. Because I've taken some short videos at concerts and then played it back, and I was like, that's not what it sounded like. I mean, I've never taken a video at a concert and then had like 7 beers and then listened to it again, and maybe it would sound closer. But it's like a weird, we've gotten into this weird thing, I think, where it's like we used to take pictures to remember something specific, or to remember a time, or what someone looked like when they were a kid. And now it's like we take pictures and videos because it's like we have this idea that we're going to be able to relive these experiences over and over. And I'm like, just take enough of a picture to remind you of the thing. You know what I mean? But then you don't have to take 20 minutes of video at a concert. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, it's a phone-free concert, and there's like a lot of people who are freaking out about it on the internet, because that's where people freak out about everything. My first least favorite is there's a bunch of people who are like, what about people who monitor their diabetes with their phone? I'm not making fun of people who monitor diabetes with their phone. I'm making fun of people because everyone one of the surest signs that you're an idiot is that you think you've thought of something that no one else has thought of yet. You know what I mean? That's almost certainly means you're an idiot, because I promise you, people have thought about this. And I'm like, I bet if you go to the concert and you show them your like diabetes app or whatever, they probably let you go in with your phone. You know what I mean? They give you a wristband or something. Or, what everyone's saying is they have places you can use your phone. So, you have to like leave your seat and go do whatever. And I'm like, okay, so you could do that? I mean, whatever. And then some other fucking guy was like, oh, I don't know. If I'm going to a concert, I have to get a sitter, and I don't like the idea of not being reachable. And I'm like, you're not reachable for maybe 2 hours. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, people like did this back in the day, right? Like my mom would go on a date, or she would go out roller skating. It's not like she had the ability to call at any time. You know what I mean? But also I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, what do you think's going to happen? Or like, I don't know. What's your kid going to do? Look, if you don't trust your babysitter and you don't want to leave your kid with them, then maybe just don't go. I think like you being able to text the babysitter periodically throughout the night is more. If that's something you feel you need to do, then maybe that's the sign you shouldn't fucking go. But also, I'm just like, do you think you're the first person who's ever had kids? Like, you're the first person who's ever had this problem? It's like, it's really not a problem. I think you'll be fine. I don't know. It's been gross because I'm looking at it and it's like all these people are like, oh, I want to be able to do this or do that. And I'm like, guys, if you can't go without your phone for a planned 2-hour block when you'll be at a concert, it's not like you can really chat with people anyway. You got a problem, man. You got a fucking problem. Anyway, that's the family quarrels. Kind of like Family Matters. Do you think Family Matters was based on family quarrels? I don't. Giacomo Rossini, the Barber of Seville in Milan. Many audience members were supporters of the elder composer Giovanni Paisiello, who had written a Barber of Seville of his own. They shouted, heckled, hissed, and jeered at Rossini's new version of the piece. Yeah, like, can you imagine that in the movie theater? I liked the original Fall Guy, so I'm going to go to the new one and heckle the whole movie. And when people are mad at me, whatever. I mean, on the other hand, I am starting to turn on the audiences a little because I'm like, if you don't like it, you know what I mean? It's like, if it's a matter of personal taste, I don't know, maybe don't ruin it for other people. Let's see, Daniel Aber, La Muetta de Portici in Brussels. Audience members at a performance in Brussels left before the end of the opera to join planned riots that were already taking place across the city, marking the beginning of the Belgian Revolution. I don't know if that's really fair on this list. It kind of sounds like, okay, well, the revolution's starting, but that's really not going to start getting wound up until about 9. So, I'm going to hit the concert at 7 and then head on over to the Belgian Revolution, I guess. I mean, that seems a little bit like unfair. It's not like people walked out, they left before the end, and it's like, well, I mean, to take part in a revolution, I don't know. Honestly, that seems like very responsible behavior. It's like, I'm going to patronize the arts, then I'm going to go fuck shit up. Hector Berlioz, Benvenuto Cellini in Paris. The audience hissed at most of the music after the first few numbers. Yeah, I guess it just sucked. Must suck to suck, Hector. Richard Wagner, Tannhäuser in Paris. The audience was unruly for several reasons. Whistling and catcalls occurred the night before during the premiere of the Paris version in response to the music, like the shepherd's piping in Act 1. Wagner also did not play the Klaxvi in order to prevent disruptions. The interruptions increased during the second performance when the Jockey Club de Paris organized a disruption in response to the opera's ballet being placed in the first act instead of the second, which was customary. The jockey members usually arrived in time for the second act in order to see the ballet and did not take kindly to Wagner's dissent. Okay, there is so much happening here. So the clack, I had to look this up. It's an organized body of professional applauders in French theaters and opera houses. Members are called clackers. It kind of sounds like, though, what they do is they're like, hey, it almost sounds like in this instance, they were like, listen, if you pay us, we do our clapping and prevent disruptions from ourselves. But if you don't, I don't know, it might get a little disruptive up in here. I don't know, if you want your cute little opera to go off without a hitch, maybe you show me the money. Which is crazy. I mean, it's basically like a sort of theater sanctioned extortion, which I don't really understand. It's like, this is This is the opposite of like Alamo Drafthouse, right? Where they're like, we'll just kick someone out for talking even once. These guys are like, hey man, if they buy a ticket, they can do whatever the fuck they want. They want to catcall, they want to hiss, they want to disrupt the performance. But then, when the Jockey Club de Paris, a traditional gentleman's club, gathering for the elite, organized a disruption because the ballet was in the first act instead of the second. The jockey members usually arrived in time for the second act in order to see the ballet and didn't take kindly to Wagner's descent. So basically, these fuckers show up late because they're like, well, the ballet. It's like, look, I don't show up for the openers to this two concerts. I show up for the main act. So they go to a concert and then they're like, oh shit, there were no openers. So then they like ruin the main show because they are like, we come swanning in, to see the ballet. And I'm like, okay, so you don't want to see the music part of the show, but the ballet, that's because you're so cool. That's like a cool guy move. I don't like doing the music stuff. That's for fucking nerds. The ballet is where it's at. Let's see, we have Arrigo Boito, Mephistopheles in Milan. The audience came predisposed to drown out Boito's clackers and succeeded in making the music inaudible with their hisses and boos. I guess they just didn't like him. Now we're in the 20th century. Already we've moved that far. Let's see. Giacomo Puccini, Madama Butterfly in Milan. One of the biggest flops in Italian opera history. I like how that starts. Like, it's like one of the biggest flops in Italian opera history. And I'm like, sure. To me, it's like, I mean, Italian opera history seems like something that's vast, but also, I don't even understand how in 1904 you fucking knew there was an opera to see. Like, do you just walk past the theater and they have a sign out front? How do you even find out? The performance was met with cheers and boos throughout. Originally, the opera was split into only 2 acts with no intermission during the overlong second act. Puccini, aiming for Verismo, which is truth? Okay, planted people with bird whistles throughout the audience to accompany the Act 2 intermezzo. The already restless audience responded by making loud animal noises of their own. Puccini withdrew the opera the very next day and made several changes before re-debuting the opera 3 months later in Brescia to a much more favorable response. Well, that's nice, I guess. I mean, this seems like, almost like a test audience thing. Although maybe they were right. This is the thing, is like sometimes you read these and you're like, maybe the test audience, the test audience must be right sometimes, right? You hear all the stories about movies that seemingly were wrecked by test audiences or studio meddling. But then sometimes I've been watching some movies that are like very independent movies for a project you'll find out about soon. And while I am also a person who's like, it seems like studios kind of fuck up movies and like artistic direction and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm like, these ones where there was no studio meddling, I can't honestly say are faring much better. So I don't know. And the test audience, I'm like, what if the original Madame Butterfly was amazing? You know what I mean? What if these guys are wrong? What if they got whipped up in the, the fun? It was like they did the bird whistles and then one genuinely funny person was like, meow. And then everyone laughed. And so then someone else did it. And, everyone kind of got just caught up in the fun of doing that shit. Richard Strauss, Electra in London. Due to Strauss's already poor reputation, when he was brought on stage, he was met with screaming and fits of discontent. He had a bad reputation. Bad reputation. I'm looking up Richard Strauss just to be like, where's his fame and success with operas? And Nazi Germany. Oh, Strauss never joined the Nazi party and studiously avoided Nazi forms of greeting. Was that why he was probably not popular in 1910? No, that was 1933. Late operas and family tragedy. Into the war. I don't know. Who knows? Legacy. Time magazine suggested in 1927 that he wrote music to test how much cacophony, dissonance, exaggeration, and clowning his audiences would applaud. Eminent musicologist Hugo Riemann reflected, his last works only too clearly reveal his determination to make a sensation at all costs. Okay. This seems like too music-y for me to really understand. I thought his poor reputation was going to be like, I don't know, he came out on stage and shot a guy or something. Francesco Baliglia Pratea, Musica Futurista in Rome. I'm sorry, I know no Italian, so this is going to be rough. At the second performance of the work, the audience booed and threw refuse at the orchestra, and some fighting occurred. I mean, I don't know that you're not justified if you're like playing a violin in a show and someone throws trash at you and you get up and engage in fisticuffs with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that that's totally... There are things that I think are wrong and not so wrong. And it's like, well, you know, this guy didn't make the music, right? And it's like, well, he sucks at the violin. I don't know if that's a good reason to throw garbage at him. This would be a good motion picture, right? You have like a hockey enforcer who secretly always wanted to play the violin, and then someone throws garbage at him and he just gets up and beats the shit out of him. And then the opera is like, actually, we kind of need someone to be our enforcer. The crowds are getting very rowdy. And it's just a hockey enforcer beating up a bunch of elderly people. I just said this would be a great movie. I'm downgrading that to not very good movie. Altenburg Lieder in Vienna. As part of a front in Vienna's ongoing style wars, the audience booed and catcalled, and some punches were thrown. Berg's piece was highly expressionistic, which prompted the uproar after growing tensions in the crowd. The event came to be known as the Scandal Concert. See, this is like the thing. This would break my heart if I was into classical music. So I'd be like, people used to care so much about classical music, they would throw punches. And it's not just about, you know, like whatever. It's like the piece was too expressionistic. I wouldn't even know how to quantify a piece of music as expressionistic, let alone too expressionistic. You know what I mean? Like, let's look up expressionistic and be like, what would qualify? It's a style of art, literature, or film that emphasizes the expression of inner emotions and subjective experiences rather than objective reality. Okay, so like, I wouldn't really enjoy, I don't really like movies where it's just like images, or poetry where it's just words, but it's not really, there's nothing concrete. I don't know that I would punch someone about it, but you know, at the same time, that's the thing, right? Can you imagine caring so much? Like I buy a book and it's very expressionistic. You know, I read Grant Morrison's The Invisibles, which is pretty expressionistic. And then I bring it back to Borders and then get in a fist fight with someone over it. I cannot imagine it. Did that really happen except for the fist fight? Yeah, I did. I returned a comic one time, a graphic novel, a trade paperback, because I thought it sucked. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to try. I don't know if they'll let me, but I'm going to try. And they did. They let me. I don't know if I had told them that it was bad. I lied and said I got the wrong one. That's what I would do today. Igor Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring. Dueling factions tried to drown each other out during the ballet's premiere, launching generations of exaggerations of what actually happened in the hall that night. Generations of exaggerations. Maybe that was the concert to be at, you know what I mean? That was the fire festival of the time. And it's like everyone who's there was like, I need my 15 minutes. I'm going to make up some other thing that happened. We had another one that was met with hisses and catcalls, and that's all it says. Luigi Russolo, The Awakening of a City. A concert organized by the Futurists to provide the first public demonstration of their experimental noise-making instruments called Intonarumori resulted in an unexpected fracas, with Futurists led by Filippo Tommaso Marinetti fighting members of the audience in the stalls. Don't know what the stalls are, but they have these instruments, these Intonarumori, look like big boxes with like giant horns on them. I don't know if I can see. Russolo built these instruments to perform the music outlined in his The Art of Noises manifesto, written in 1913. I need to write a manifesto. Like, you know, what is it about the word manifesto, right? That's like, this is crazy shit. There's just something about the word manifesto that's like, there's a difference between, oh yeah, I made these instruments and I wrote a piece, you know, encouraging people to use them, and a manifesto about what noise is. Let's see. Eric Satie Parade. One faction of the audience booed, hissed, and was generally unruly, but they were eventually silenced by an enthusiastic ovation. Huh. I guess that worked out. Anton Webern, 5 Movements for String Quartet, Opera Number 5. Opera Number 5. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, it's probably a Webern attended, interrupting his summer with Schoenberg, who remained in Traunkirchen. I don't know what any of this means. Webern praised the Amar Quartet's performance to Berg, but what unfolded left them out of sorts and disturbed his plans to continue composing that summer. The Moldenhauers described the Salzburg affair as a riot subdued only by police intervention. Wilhelm Grosch constantly laughed, crying "Furchtbar," which means terrible, during the 4th movement. Adolf Linebrake Loos, whew, and Rudolf Gans defended Webern. A London Daily Telegraph reporter wrote, "I never saw an angrier man of Webern's taking the stage amid the fray, as if he were going to kill." The quartet was able to play the music in full to an invitation-only audience the next day. That's pretty hilarious. I must have sucked to be named Adolf in, 1922. And then you're just like, oh boy, things are going to get real weird for you coming up. Let's see. Edgard Varese, Hyperprism in New York. The audience laughed throughout and hissed at the conclusion, which prompted Varese to repeat the work in hopes of a more serious response. Whew. I mean, I don't know about that tack. Maybe I'll just do it again. Maybe if I do it again, is that like maybe they didn't get it thinking? I don't know if this is good. Let's see. We have Rued Langard, Symphony Number 6 in Copenhagen. Oh God, Freidliff is what it looks like. Let's call him Fred Olsen, editor of the Extra Blade, reported what happened the day after. The audience abandoned themselves to one surprise after the other. Along the rows of seats, tittering, hissing, the gnashing of teeth, and suppressed good griefs could be heard. Some groaned, others spat. An elderly lady collapsed and had to be carried out. I mean, that sounds exactly like what would happen at like a really great Motley Crue concert. An elderly lady who's in there for some reason is like, oh, and, has to be carried out. And when the police had finally come to an end, a violent when the piece had finally come to an end, a violent booing and hissing could be heard throughout the concert hall. Offended shrieks and outbursts of laughter drowned out a half-hearted applause. Rude Langard failed to understand what was going on. He thought he was being called forward. He stood up there on stage and waved and bowed with a bouquet of flowers in one hand. How rough would that be to be like, that was amazing. They really liked it. And then to find out that everyone's like, no. George Antheil, Sonata Sauvage in Paris. Very raucous physical altercations and verbal fights broke out within 3 minutes of Antheil playing, with many distinguished guests in attendance. Artist Man Ray, that's an artist, Man Ray. He's got a frightening gaze. I guess that's not a superhero. Reportedly punched a man in the nose. Marcel Duchamp began hurling obscenities at a fellow audience member, and Eric Satie was heard shouting, "What precision, what precision?" I don't know what that means. I mean, yeah, it's almost like, do they have mosh pits at these fucking things? Like, is this where this all began? Henry Cowell, Antinomy in Leipzig. The audience threw program notes at Cowell and clambered onto the stage, leading to a large physical altercation and the arrest of over 20 audience members. This is what I'm saying. Like, I cannot imagine going to a classical music show and it's like the classical music fans are incensed and get into a fist fight on stage. I'd be like, I don't understand what's going on. I would be like, did somebody who's on stage sleep with somebody's wife and he brought all his boys and now they're going to fist fight? And like the other people on stage are just like, I don't know what's going on. And, you know, is that what's happening? Another Henry Cowell, like 2 weeks later, 5 encores to Dynamic Motion. An audience member began screaming at Cowell, "Stop, stop," and would not be quiet when shushed by audience members, leading to attempt to drown one another out with continuous catcalling. Well, you know, I guess for him, it's like, well, that sucked. But I mean, 2 weeks ago, there was like a huge fist fight on the stage and 20 people got arrested. So one asshole screaming, "Stop, stop." I know for most people that would be bad, but you know, this is pretty bad. Eric Satie, didn't we have him already? We did. Mercure. The police were called to the premiere due to unruly behavior that sprang from the Parisian cultural infighting at the time. That seems like that's not his fault, but I'm not sure. George Antheil again. Ballet Mécanique. The premiere performance received a large ovation despite some unruly behavior in the audience, including an outburst by Ezra Pound. But there were some fistfights in the street after the concert. Ezra Pound was an American poet and critic, and a major figure in the early modernist poetry movement. I mean, oh no, and a collaborator in fascist Italy and the Salo Republic during World War II. Ruh-roh. You know, and we had to learn about people like Ezra Pound when I was like in English class in college. They should have told us this stuff. They should have been like, did you guys realize like back in the day, there was such a thing as like a two-fisted cultural critic? Like, can you imagine if Roger Ebert, you know what I mean? Like when, who's that guy who makes all those movies? He makes all the video game movies. He's like terrible director. Well, people hate him. Uwe Boll. And he was like, I'll invite all my critics to come fist fight me. Maybe Uwe Boll is just doing like a 1920s thing, you know what I mean? Alban Berg, Wozik. Musicologist Brian Locke called the Wozik affair the most important event at the Czech's National Theater in the interwar period. Well, I'm not so sure about that. There were many others that we could talk about. Of course, the Howell affair. The third evening's performance was interrupted by a planned demonstration in the second act before the chorus of the sleeping soldiers. This eventually culminated in its cancellation amid dueling whistling and applause. Police ordered the audience, among them Berg, his wife Helene, and Alma Mahler, to exit. Tuesday evening performances were attended by wealthier upper-middle-class subscribers. The political dimension of Berg's opera in this milieu, and moreover in the context of burgeoning Czech fascism and anti-German sentiment, has often been emphasized. Indeed, critics warred along political lines in the press. Authorities forbade more performances. So this person couldn't do this thing because, I don't know. Wouldn't it be weird? How often were the cops getting called to, like, the opera? I mean, like, if you're like, cops, you need to come to the opera, a bunch of people didn't like the opera, and they're on stage fist fighting, wouldn't they be like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, right? Like, how bad could it be? Bella Bartok, the miraculous mandarin. The plot caused a commotion in the audience, which began leaving during the performance. But it doesn't say why? Come on. I'm looking, let's just look through and see if there's any. There's one that's like, bunch of protests and whatever, and fistfights. And then the next one's like, same as above, a bunch of Stravinsky. Oh, man. It's just amazing to look at this. But, it's kind of all the same. A lot of this is from, fascism, neo-fascism, stuff like that, which I'm like, okay, Che Guevara, stuff like that. This one's pretty good. Steve Reich, 4 organs. At a Carnegie Hall performance of the work, the conservative audience tried yelling and sarcastically applauding to hasten the end of the piece, which received both boos and cheers during the ovation. One of the performers, Michael Tilson Thomas, recalls one woman walked down the aisle and repeatedly banged her head on the front of the stage, wailing, "Stop, stop, I confess." Here's what's sad. I want you to guess how many of these there have been in the 21st century. 3. Now, we're not very far into the 21st century, but it certainly seems like this has slowed down significantly. Giuseppe Verdi in Ada. When tenor Roberto Alagna's opening aria Celeste Ada was booed by the Logionisti in the opera house's less expensive seat, he walked off stage while the music was still playing. Understudy Antonello Palombi in a black dress shirt and slacks came on a few seconds later to replace him. Alagna did not return to the production. Alagna. Steve Reich in piano phase. During a performance of the piece by Iranian harpsichordist Mehan Esfahani in the Kölner Philharmonie, parts of the crowd clapped, whistled, and walked out. Esfahani, as he introduced the piece in English, had been ordered by a heckler to speak in German. Loud arguments between numerous members of the crowd persisted for several minutes. Esfahani stopped his performance and started playing a concerto by Bach. C.P.E. Bach? Who the fuck is that? Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. Oh, that's weird. He attributed the pandemonium to the choice of a modern composition, while the German media inferred a xenophobic motive. Why would you be like, speak English? He's playing the piano? I don't get it. If I was seeing an Iranian piano player and they were talking in English, he's not even talking in Iranian, he's talking in English, a third language. I would just be like, whatever, man. If that guy knows 2 fucking languages, he knows one more than I do. Giacomo Puccini, Tosca, January 4th, 2023. The controversy primarily stemmed from the unconventional staging of the opera at the Grand Théâtre des Cieux. The production featured Mario Cavaradossi as an alter ego of Italian film director Pasolini, who was murdered in 1975. Trying to draw parallels between them as artists seemed inconvenient to religious and political powers. Controversial scenes included many references to sexual violence and an invented scene of homosexual prostitution between Pasolini and his alleged killer, while the song Love in Portofino played in the background. All this was met with substantial booing from the audience. Can you imagine? You're like, I'm going to really take this guy down in 2023, and I'm going to do it via the medium of opera. Like, how... Seems safe to me. Seems like a safe way to do it. If you're like, I want to take this guy down, but I don't really want anyone to know about it, but I would feel better. Seems like kind of a good move. Just like, I'm going to write a scathing opera about him. Oh, okay. Well, geez, I hope that doesn't result in bad things for you. All right. Well, that's a good coverage of scandals. Unruly audiences at classical music performances. I hope none of you care about classical music, not because I think there's anything wrong with classical music, but because I'm like, that's got to be a hard knock life. It's not even something that you're like, this is like an indie band that I love, and, you know, people just have shitty taste. It's worse because you're like, at one time people cared about this, and now they don't. So yeah, I guess I'm saying if that's you, I'm sorry that your life is terrible. And I don't know what to do about it. But, you know, you don't listen to this for solutions. You listen to this for problems. All right. We'll see you next time.